Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished entrepreneur from the world of FinTech from Gurgaon, India, Mr. Subhrangshu Kumar Neogi. Subhrangshu, welcome to the show.
Thank you, and pleasure to be on your show, Ashutosh.
Subhrangshu is the co-founder and executive director of Trustmore Technologies. He has served across industry segments such as CPG, retail, telecom, financial services, media, etc., for over 2 decades. So, Subhrangshu, before we get into what Trustmore does, tell me about your own journey and what were some of your big challenges in transitioning from a corporate leader to an entrepreneur?
I mean, I often, I'm kind of fascinated to answer this question all the time because everybody keeps on asking me this question.
Mm-hmm.
And, as you know, my background, almost 20, 25 plus years in various corporate leadership roles, started my career in the mid 90s when we were away from social media and mobile phones were just kind of, starting in. The economy was at the threshold of a transition. So did the usual route, started in FMCG, dirtied my hands in sales and distribution, cut my teeth in brand marketing, moved on to retail with Reebok in India, was fortunate enough to be part of the core team initially in India and this part of the world. And then moved into telecom, early days of telecom, the first phase, moved into media. So, did multiple things. And then I had a fairly long stint in financial services as chief marketing officer for the Religare Group, was fortunate to be part of the core team, which essentially helped seed various portfolio businesses. And also, one of the achievements was to take the company public. So fascinating experience. And while I was there, I was fortunate to be in an ecosystem which essentially taught me lessons in entrepreneurship. And as they say, that kida or that bug bit you somewhere, and you said that, look, whatever I have to do at some point in time, I need to jump, and cross over and do something of my own. So that kept happening. But as you know, every 6 months, something new came along and something exciting happened. And it just sort of, held you back. But then eventually, as luck would have it, certain circumstances changed and, part default, part design, I jumped into entrepreneurship. But this was clearly a plan that I had in mind. To answer the second part of your question, that how easy or difficult it is, because all my friends who are still continuing their corporate journey, as I call them, they're on the treadmill, as I keep joking with them. It's not been easy, because I think two or three things. One thing I realized, and, I was mentally preparing myself to, be in this game. I think most people think it's very easy because, when you're in a corporate avatar and nobody better than you to understand this, having been in an illustrious role yourself for all these years, people, it's the brand that carries you. Okay. You have a certain title of an XYZ company that carries you, and you think the world is, is a bed of roses. Okay. But when you actually start making that first phone call to even talk to people and they don't receive your calls, that's when reality hits you. That, listen, you're not representing a brand, it's your own brand now. You're doing it for yourself and you're out there on your own. It's like, the analogy often happens that, when you're doing your first public speaking experience on a stage, and there's no podium in front of you and there's an audience in front of you, it's exciting, but it's scary. Okay. So it's a mixed sort of a feeling. So for me, I think, as I said, I was mentally preparing, but I think the first thing that was a learning was that I got rid of this, three-letter word, which is innate in every human being, which is our ego. Okay. I can't say I got rid of it, but I at least became or tried to become more self-aware and, try to become a little bit more humble, because I think the corporate trappings, you like it or not, kind of set you in a certain mold. And the idea was to get out of that first. Second, I think one of the things that really helped me in this transition was the ability to, and I use the word shameless, to shamelessly start seeking help. Culturally in India, I have not seen that. People are afraid or they're, scared to seek help. Arey, what will the other person think? This guy doesn't know this. But I think when you're in this journey, it's a very lonely journey. And when you're preparing yourself to kind of catapult to the next level and transition, seeking help is very important. And believe it or not, you're an entrepreneur yourself now. There are tons of people, as they say, who are there in the ecosystem who can collaborate and who can help. And there are certain, and you can't have all the answers yourselves, right? So therefore, seeking help is very important. Third thing, I think, call me old fashioned, but I think it's the good old grunt and hard work. There's no substitute for that. So if you're working hard and if you're, sort of taking every day as it comes,
Mm.
a plan, are self-disciplined. There's no substitute for that.
Well
So these,
said.
I think, a few of my,
The
learning.
great pointers. Great pointers. Thank you. So let's now talk about trust more.
Sure.
Tell me a little bit about the mission of Trustmore and how it serves your clients.
Sure, sure. So, Trustmore Technologies, as you know, is a fintech. We are in the business of creating an ecosystem, as I call it, of trust, transparency, and simplification of financial transactions,
Mm.
right? So, we currently have multiple offerings under the Trustmore banner, and we are essentially like a technology service provider operating in the payments, transactions domain at large,
Mm.
catering to enterprises, SMEs, digital first businesses, corporations, and that entire ecosystem. So, which means very soon we'll also launch products for founders and business owners
Mm.
who we anyway would be serving, from the context of their organizations,
Mm.
right? So, the flagship product of the company is Escrow Pay. Or the
Mhm.
flagship brand is Escrow Pay, and then we have multiple other offerings.
Yeah.
Escrow Pay was actually the first, or is the first, escrow as a service offering in the Indian market,
Mm.
right? And we were the first company to actually conceptualize and commercialize this in India. So the journey has been about 8 or 9 years. I initially got involved in the company as an investor and a board member, and then 2019 onwards, I'm more full-time, active as a operating partner and co-founder. So what we do is we basically, in escrow as a service, we operate like a managed service in association with banks and
Mm.
regulated entities, and we created a digital layer
Mm.
on top of the banking backbone.
Mm.
Okay. So today, if you were to open an escrow account with a traditional bank or a legacy bank, it is not a very easy process.
Mm.
Okay? It's not an off-the-shelf product like other financial products that you typically find in a branch banking scenario or a wholesale banking scenario, right? So there is, there is paperwork, there is a lot of manual grunt work, etc., and it's time consuming. But today, digital first businesses, and especially post COVID, when there is a lot of, trust deficit, a lot of lack of transparency, and digital transactions have become a reality. I think predictability in transactions has become very important, and which is what I think an escrow can do. And what we've done and how we've solved for it, as I told you, we've created a digital stack on top of the banking backbone, and
Mm.
we've created a unified solution. So, which means
Mm.
if you are, let's say, a platform who want, let's say, you're a B2B platform, and you would want an escrow solution for your buyers and sellers at an
Mm.
underlying level, you come to me, and what I do is I provide you an API first solution. Okay. And it is a one-stop shop. So you don't need to talk to a trustee company separately, a PG. So we are
Mm.
connecting multiple payment rails. So that entire process, right from, digital identity checks, digital contracting, signatures, and pay in, pay out, and completion of the transaction seamlessly happens through our platform and our services.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Thank you. The other aspect that I wanted to ask you was,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure if it is applicable, but
Yeah.
what is your approach to risk management in a fintech environment?
A very good question, because most misconceptions, and it's a very big misconception, that if you're a fintech, you're like this Wild West cowboy shooting from the hip and
Right.
trying to really think consumer first, which is fine. But
Mm.
I think being in financial services, and as a fintech, as I call it, fintech is an extended arm of regulated entities and banks. It's like an OTT layer on top of
Correct.
legacy backbone.
Mm.
So I think risk management, compliances, adhering to regulations, very, very important.
Mm.
So while there are, or they might not be in certain scenarios, hard regulations, but eventually you're joined in the hip with your partners, which is banks, right?
Mm.
So for us as an organization, I think we've been very clear from day one that even though there are, so if you look at, sorry, I'm just digressing a little bit just to step back. There are three parts to our business. There's an India onshore business where there are softer regulations. There's no hard regulations as a TSP for us. But from day one or day zero, we've been very conscious about going to the RBI, going to regulators, and taking guidance from them proactively. So
Mm.
we are very clear that, ultimately we are in the business of managing risk, and compliances become therefore very important.
Mm.
Second part of our business is basically where we recently, sort of forayed, is our cross-border play through the Gift City. And we are the first in our category to be licensed by the IFSC, the Unified Regulator. So we are regulated there.
Mm.
And again, proactively did this about a year back, and we are in beta stage. So we're going to be launching our cross-border play in 15 currency.
Mm.
The third piece is basically what, we are building in other countries, because
Mm.
what we're building in India, or what we built in India, we believe is scalable, because the pain is fairly common and similar in other geographies. And there too, the regulatory environment is very different. So even though we are at a beta stage, even though we are exploring the market conditions, we are consciously going out there. And the first thing, or one of the boxes that we'd like to tick, is to really look at the regulatory environment and adhere to that and have compliance guardrails, protecting our customers and the ecosystem.
Fascinating. And what role does digital transformation play in the strategy of Trustmore?
No, I think we are all about digital, right? So
Yeah.
we are digital first, we're all about digital. And I think fundamentally, whatever problems we are serving or solving is digitally led, So typically, if you look at our journey, when we identify a problem, primarily the good old fashioned way, talking to customers, talking to people in the ecosystem, we identify a need gap. Based on that need gap, we work on a product architecture by looking at the ecosystem, and then you leverage technology at large to solve that problem. But at the end of the day, India being the market that it is, and India is today the core of our business, I strongly believe that even though you're a fintech, or even though you're a tech company, or any tech company in any field, it is still a very touch and feel market. So it is very important that while you leverage technology to solve the problem that you're solving, ultimately it has to be a managed services model. So which is really at the core of how we service our customers.
Well said. My other question for you, Subhrangshu, is that fintech is, based on my understanding, quite a crowded area.
It is.
How do you handle competition from more established financial institutions?
Excellent question, because I keep, we keep sort of encountering this question all the time. Because initially, when we started out, Ashutosh, as I said, about 9 years ago, when we popped this idea, and this was actually popped by my, colleague and founder, Ashwin, who actually evangelized this entire concept and the category at large, we spoke to the first bank. They were very, very skeptical, and they pretty much wrote us off saying that, listen, this is our product. God knows what you're going to be doing. Anyway, if you still want to do it, here you go. But I think that relationship has evolved over the years. Okay. So specifically speaking about escrow as a service, I think banks don't see us as competition. It's more a co-creation model.
Okay.
Because ultimately the account is with the bank, the float is with the bank. We provide a digital layer to offer a seamless and a ubiquitous solution to our customers, right? So that is when it comes to banks and legacy institutions.
Right.
When it comes to other players, because, initially for the first 6 or 7 years of our journey, it was a very exciting journey because we were the only ones in the category. So it's good and bad both. Good because, you're the torchbearer. So whatever tailwinds are there, the category is expanding. You sort of reap the dividends. Bad because every time you meet either investors or any other stakeholder, they ask you this question that, boss, whatever you're doing, it was so simple. Why didn't XYZ do it? And they're 100 times bigger than you. We didn't have an answer to that.
Right.
But I think the aha moment happened when a lot of new fintechs emerged in this space, which is good for the category. And we welcome competition because, the category expands at large. Okay. So 2.5 years ago, some new startups came in, were doing a reasonably good job. Then some of the bigger boys in the payments game also entered this space, which in my view or our view is a big validation for us. So, as they say, you can climb on top of the roof and keep thumping your chest about doing what you're doing. But when some of the other people enter this space, that's a big validation for the tapasya that you've done over the years.
Well said. And Subhrangshu, when I was reading and preparing for my conversation with you,
Sure.
I was fascinated to see that you also support a lot of underserved SMEs.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about how you cater to their needs.
Sure. So, see, I again, sound cliched as it may sound, SMEs, honestly, today, and a lot of people say this, I will again, at the cost of repetition, repeat that it is an underserved and unserved segment by legacy institutions because of the sheer size and the kind of depth and width of the market that they are in. So one of the biggest pains is collections and payments, right? So if, let's say you're an SME, either a buyer or a supplier, your collections and payments are very, very important. It's like lifeblood. Cash flow is the lifeblood of your business. And if that equilibrium gets disturbed, your entire model, your entire hard work that you've done over the years can go for a toss. So let's figure this. Let's say you're a supplier, you've supplied to me, and there is a certain sort of a time period by which your invoices are due, but the invoices are not paid. What can you do? Right? Either you get into litigation. Of course, the government is doing its bit to, kind of enable this entire ecosystem and facilitate this entire, early payments of invoices, etc. And there are multiple, offerings available today. But collections become very, very critical. So there are about 10 to 11 lakh crores stuck in the market on account of late collections. So that's a humongous number, right? And out of this, a lion's share of invoices remain unpaid for a very long period, which is more than, a couple of years. So
Wow.
that can actually spell disaster for SMEs.
Hmm.
Okay. Now let's, assume that as an MSME or an SME, you're a buyer. Let's say you're a t-shirt manufacturer sitting out of Ludhiana. You're embedded with a large brand. You have a supplier who's relatively unknown to you, sitting in a distant geography, and you've given an advance. The guy does not pay you on time, or for whatever reason, there is a fraud, or there could be anything, any eventuality. Your business goes for a toss because A, you blocked your funds. Secondly, you get blacklisted by your principal, right? So either as a buyer or as a supplier in the entire MSME ecosystem or emerging business ecosystem, cash flow equilibrium becomes very, very critical. And that's how we said that, look, escrow as a mechanism can be very, very useful. But again, the idea was to demystify for them. We could not have given what we do to enterprises, larger companies, like an API-based solution. So we actually created a DIY version of an escrow on the go, so which is what we are providing. And while we were doing this, Ashutosh, we also realized there's a whole bunch of other pain areas that can be solved. So what we've done now is created an ecosystem or a community for MSMEs called Bisuraksha. So if you be part of that community, we not only solve the collections and payments challenges through an escrow, but also offer other products. So for instance, capital. So we work with a lot of NBFCs, partner lenders, etc. So we've created curated lending opportunities for our MSME, community members, as we call them. And then, of course, insurance solutions, investment solutions, etc. So we've actually created a very nice acronym for the team internally. It's called the Growth Pill. So we've taken some creative liberty to call it not PILL, but PIIL. So payments, collections, investments, insurance, and loans. So we created this 360-degree community, solving their problems at large so that they can start growing worry-free and anxiety-free. Because ultimately, they should be focusing not on these things, we believe, but on their core, which is growing their business.
Well said. Moving on, how do you see the role of artificial intelligence and machine learning evolving in FinTech, specifically at Trustmore?
No, I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, the world is moving in that direction, and payments being payments, which is really the core, and transactions being transactions, they're repetitive in nature, right? And over a period of time, every business has to be capital efficient, and that capital efficiency can always sort of kick in once you leverage technology, once you leverage smart technology, and AI ML is critical to that, and it can play a very, very critical role in terms of automating and making transactions smarter, faster, safer, as we call them.
Well said. Okay. Let me now move to customer feedback, and most products anywhere in the world, maybe for FinTech more so, customer feedback is so critical for you to keep on modifying and amending your offerings. How has customer feedback shaped your products and services?
Well, I think very critical. And this is for not just us as a FinTech or as, a technology service solution provider, but for people at large, I think you got to listen very carefully. And the habit of listening, as I keep telling my sales guys, is that, more than speaking, first learn to listen and absorb feedback. And I think that's one of the core pillars of our culture code. So, we follow a diet philosophy, as I call it, diligence, innovation, empathy, and teamwork. That's our internal culture code, not to be sort of told to customers at large outside, but empathy is about stepping into the customer's shoes, listening, observing, and then offering a solution. So if you look at the cornerstone of Escrow as a service, I think the way we evolved over the years, it's purely based on customer feedback and co-creation. I mean, I'm not at the liberty of taking certain names, but there are use cases. There are clients where they thought through their problem statement, and we worked along with their product and marketing teams or business teams to actually create and co-create a product, which have been firsts in the category. And we can, we say that with a lot of pride, but at the same time with a lot of humility, that I think at the cornerstone, one of the operating cornerstones, and continues to be that for us, is customer feedback and empathy. And that has also given us, the sort of confidence to launch other products in this entire ecosystem. So today, if you go and look at the shape and texture of our business, we not only have Escrow as a service, which is our flagship product or brand, but also other products in the entire transactional ecosystem, which has been a result of not only our vision, but largely coming in as a, sort of a, outside in sort of a scenario where we onboard customer feedback and then tailor make solutions accordingly.
Well said. So, I have time for two more questions for you, Subhrangshu. My next question is based on everything that you're doing and the trends that are coming out in the fintech sector.
Yeah.
Where do you see Trustmore in the next 5 years?
Very difficult question.
Mhm.
I mean, I still remember when we were growing up, people were looking at 5-year plans and 10-year plans, and
Yeah.
you would know this better than anybody else. But today I think the world that we live in, while it's good to have a 5-year roadmap and a long-term vision, honestly, we don't think beyond 3 years.
Okay.
Okay. So in the 3 years, at least that we are talking about, 2 to 3 years, in the coming 2 to 3 years, I think the idea would be to really grow the business. As I told you, the three parts to it. So the India piece, the Gift City piece, which is our offshore piece, and the overseas business.
Mm.
So in India, we would definitely like to see ourselves consolidating and growing our position, leadership position further by launching newer products and establishing the existing products. Gift City, of course, as I said, we'll start transacting, if all goes well, very soon in 15 currencies.
Mm.
So that is a big opportunity. We would like to see that grow over the next couple of years.
Mm.
And the third is really our onshore pieces in other geographies.
Right.
The way I see it, we would probably get to see early green shoots there and early traction and start replicating the model, albeit, in a customized fashion in these geographies, similar to what we've done in India.
Okay. And my last question to you, and this is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation.
Sure.
Based on your amazing journey as an entrepreneur, what would you say are 3 lessons you would like our viewers to take back from your own journey?
Look, I'm not a big fan of giving gyan, and I have to, kids, or they're not kids anymore. They're just early young men, and I keep trying to tell them a lot of things because they're doing what they're doing in life and they don't listen to me at home. But there are youngsters who keep approaching me. There are entrepreneurs, there are peers, ex-colleagues. So I don't know about 2 or 3, but I have a personal mantra, and without sounding too sort of gimmicky about it, but I believe in something called EPIC.
Mm.
Okay. And so it's an acronym that I've coined, and it's EPIC is about leading your life in a manner which is all about energy. So you should have that energy, should have the capability of passing on this energy to people who are around you, because then you're creating a very highly charged environment around you, which is always very productive. P is about passion. So jo karna hai, if you have to do it, you do it with full jazba and from here. Otherwise, just don't do it. There are no half measures. So that's been a personal philosophy of mine, and it's helped. I is about integrity. Be it your personal relationships or your professional relationships, I think integrity is very important. No compromises around that. And I think that's helped me, sort of do what I do every day. And C is about collaboration. A lot of people, including me, I was actually conceited a few years ago when I used to think, boss, I've been there, done that, as a corporate hunter, as a senior person in the corporate space, it's muscle memory. I'll be able to do it. I think collaboration is very important. You don't have all the answers to, by yourselves. You have to collaborate. You have to learn to collaborate. And it's a muscle memory you need to develop. So EPIC is my philosophy. EPIC is my mantra. And I think that's what keeps me going every day when I wake up.
Wonderful. And on that note, and your wonderful mantra of EPIC, which is energy, passion, integrity, and collaboration. Thank you, Subhrangshu, for speaking to me about your own journey. Thank you for speaking to me about Trustmore and so many different aspects of Trustmore. I think I learned several new things about FinTech from you today. Thank you also for speaking to me about how technology is really at the base of everything that you're doing at Trustmore. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.